Hello, this is Sondra Oster Baras bringing you a few words of Bible from the heart of Biblical Israel. This week's Torah portion is Achrei Mot, and it actually begins with a reference to the fact that Aaron's two sons have died as they come into the Holy of Holies, and then it goes on to a description of the special service that takes place on the Day of Atonement when Aaron, the high priest, goes into the Holy of Holies. And from there, though, we go on to a lot of different issues, and the one that I want to focus on today is chapter 18. Chapter 18 begins, "The ways of the land of Egypt, where you settled, you should not do, and the ways of the land of Canaan, to which I will be bringing you, you shall not do. Do not follow their statutes." Okay, and then it continues to talk about, and it's very interesting because in these introductory verses, it talks about laws, my statutes, my rules. Over and over again, we see those words appearing where God is saying, don't follow their rules, follow my rules. And the words are legal words, but there's a sense here that it's not just a question of certain legal rules, but mores, the way people behave. And indeed, we move on then in the rest of the chapter to a whole list of sexual activities that are prohibited. Now, a number of these sexual activities are probably things that, is a natural assumption, things having to do with incest, relations between parents and children are definitely not allowed. The Bible is actually addressing itself to men on the assumption, it's a fair assumption, that the person initiating sexual behavior is a man, and it's telling the man these are the people you cannot have sexual relations with. So in the, let's say, incest category, we have parents, siblings, we have granddaughter and daughter-in-law. Now here I would say these two relationships are not just incest. In the case of a granddaughter, you're probably talking about a child, a minor, a child. In the case of a daughter-in-law, she's probably an adult, although maybe barely an adult, but certainly someone who is under your authority. And these are concepts that are very popular with us today. We have developed quite a good sense of the problem associated with sexual relationships between somebody and a minor, something that we would call statutory rape, and certainly, and this is more well developed in recent years, the problem of sexual relations between somebody who has some level of authority or influence, undue influence over somebody. And here, the idea being that even if the woman is a consenting adult, because of the nature of relationship, that consent might not really be worth anything, because there's undue influence going on here, let's say between a boss and an employee, between a professor and a student, things like that are considered particularly problematic. But if we put this in the context of the biblical time frame, we will see also that here families live together, expanded families live together. Take, for example, the situation of a daughter-in-law. Typically, a daughter-in-law leaves her parents' home and goes to live in the home of her husband, and therefore her in-laws are not just, her husband's parents. These are the people that run her household, so they definitely have a tremendous authority over her. She's also alone. She doesn't have her parents nearby, typically. So these are people that have undue influence, that have authority. She is in a particularly vulnerable situation. And as is the case in all of the situations mentioned here in this chapter, in chapter 18, these are people that tend to live in the same family. So it's not like a fellow is going out and finding a prostitute, going into a brothel, something like that. These are the people that are within his courtyard, within his household, and therefore far more vulnerable. And so I think these are all also issues that are included here. There are also, though, a few issues that you may not think were necessarily problematic. For example, any time you're having sexual relations with someone, you cannot have the sexual relations with the mother and the daughter. Whether you started with the daughter, you started with the mother, once you have a relation with one, the other becomes absolutely off limit. You cannot have relations, and indeed not marry even, two sisters, okay? And of course, we have here mentioned no adultery. Don't have relations with your friend's wife or anybody's wife, okay? Because she's already part of this other man's family and you don't have relations with her. Again, that kind of thing is very clear. And then we have something here that is today become very controversial. There's a very definite prohibition against homosexual relations. And this is all part of these same things. So if you're talking about here certain types of things, whether it be incest, whether it be sexual relations with people where there is a unhealthy situation, these are things that perhaps in our world today is more understandable, but there are other rules that are very clear rules that today, certainly if we talk about adultery and homosexuality, where I would say, I don't know, a few decades ago, these would have been universally understood as absolutely forbidden. Today, both of these have become much more acceptable. Now, we all know that the Bible frowns on these things, but I think it's very important to see the context, because the beginning of this, as I said, refers to the ways of the land of Canaan, the ways of Egypt, and the end talks about if you do these things, you will defile the land. And therefore, I think what's really going on here is these lists of prohibitions, all within the realm of sexual relations, is seen by God not only to be specific relations that are forbidden, but are relations that reflect on the mores of society. These are specific rules. God is giving us these rules to ensure that our societies don't become Egypt or Canaan. Now, there's a lot of warning to the nation of Israel before they go into the land of Israel against idolatry, against the negative influences that they will absorb in Canaan, of all kinds of things, all kinds of moral behaviors, idolatry and different sorts of things. But I think here we have perhaps what is the essence. God is saying that in these sexual relations that are not only forbidden, but in the case of homosexuality, it is called an abomination. And all told, everything here is considered to defile the land. What God is saying is that when you start removing the barriers that He has set up for proper sexual conduct, then you will create a society that is problematic. And I will leave you with that thought for today. I think there's a lot here to think about and reflect about in our own lives and in the societies and the way society has changed even before our eyes. Anyway, ponder that. Have a wonderful weekend. Shabbat Shalom.
I hope you enjoyed that video, and we'd like to be sure you're getting all of our video content. So just click on the subscribe button below as well as on the notification bell, and that way you will have easy access to all our material. We look forward to staying in touch with you. God bless you and have a wonderful day.